All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sauti podcast. I'm Tamara Rasamni, and with me is Tariq Khalil. And today we have Petra Samaha from Citizens in a State, or مواطنون ومواطنات في الدولة.
Welcome, Petra. I don't know, let's start off by maybe having you introduce yourself to us. Who are you?
So I'm Petra Samaha. I'm an architect and urban planner. I joined مواطنون in 2016. It's been a while. And what else would you like to know?
Cool. I mean, what made you join مواطنون? And you said in 2016, so a lot has changed since then. How have you since you've been in the party, how have you noticed it change over time? And what made you join it in the first place?
I think it was a little bit what I was studying at the time. Urban planning is about making choices. How do you want to plan your resources as a country? And we had a lot of work with municipalities. Even sometimes we did plans at regional level. So we knew that the problem was not technical because we did the studies. We knew they were there, but what is it that made them not happen? And then you start to understand that the problem is really political, about who's making the choice, the decisions, or not. So, and then there were the municipal elections in 2016, and that's how مواطنون started at that time to offer an alternative view on even the municipal levels. So we ran at the country level with one national program during the municipal elections in 2016. And then the party was established, and I joined since ever it started.
How exactly did you first hear about مواطنون ومواطنات? Was it, I don't know, did you study political science or something like that, and you were always interested in politics, or?
I was interested in politics, but I was studying urban planning. And because I was interested in knowing more, I had taken all my electives, and there was one spatial economics course given by Sharb al-Nahas at AUB. So I audited it, and that's how I met him. And I was doing at the time a study on the transportation, the informal or so-called informal network in Lebanon, and how he got interested in the project. So he started coming to the BINOPS at the urban planning department, and it started there. And then that was a couple of months before the municipal elections, because I graduated in 2015. And then early 2016, we started the work.
And what has I know that you have multiple roles with مواطنون ومواطنات. What are they?
So currently I'm coordinating a committee that works on territorial issues, which is very close to what I had studied. And it's super interesting because you realize that everything in the country is about how you plan it, how you plan the territory, but more so how you govern it. Now we're hearing a lot of talk about decentralization, federalism. It's all about the territory. I'm also coordinating another committee about content creation, how the whole knowledge produced at the party can be packaged and taken out to the public. And I'm also an elected member of the Delegates Council of the party. And I do a couple of other stuff, but these are the main tasks.
I've seen your faces in other videos and stuff before, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We started our own web TV since, the traditional media was blind to all the alternative parties that were starting since 2016 or even before. So we tried to start our own platform, and we did a couple of programs, but then it was more about disseminating what we're doing. So yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, it's really cool to hear that you were actually a student of Sharb al-Nahas, which is interesting to see this person as a professor and then kind of join this larger political movement. What were some of the things that kind of that you noticed that drew you in about this specific person? And then also when you mentioned territories, what are examples of some of the work that you're doing? Is it more, because you studied urban planning and we live in Beirut, for example, is one of the cities that's really the least planned city, whether it's public space or access or even water, like wells and informal water wells. The list like goes on and on. But can you give us a bit more examples of like what that work? Just I'm just like interested actually, and okay, it's curious.
It is interesting. Actually, when you understand the politics underlying urban planning, like for instance, in spatial economics, part of the course was about the role of labor in industries in Beirut and how, cities try to create images for themselves. Like, Dubai, even Beirut tried to be the financial capital of the region after the war. And these types of images, they, the politicians or the decision makers behind these projects, they do not accept that specific classes of the society be part of the city. That's how Solidar happened. But then again, who's gonna build the project? You need labor. And this labor that lives at the fringes of the city, these are people, this is part of the society that some politicians do not want to see, but then again, they can't work without them. And this is how you start to understand the dynamics, the social dynamics behind the city. It's not about creating a beautiful place that we can walk in or a nice sidewalk or plant trees, but who's planting the trees? At what cost? Are they getting paid? Are they locals? Are they foreign workers? How do you organize this? How does it affect the economy? All of these are questions that should be part of how you conceive a city, how you plan it, how you think about it. And so today, within the party, it's not an academic work we do. It's the opposite. So we think about all the changes society is undergoing today. The demographic change that everyone is talking about is actually about how the Lebanese society is migrating. Soon enough, in 20 years, the Lebanese young population in Lebanon will be about 20% of the whole society, while the elderly will be 80% of the society. It means that the Lebanese society will become an aged society. You will have no labor. You will have to plan your economy in a way that you need human economic resources, which you won't have if you don't do anything now. And this all goes part of how you see the city. Who's going to build it? Who's going to live in it? So, yeah.
Let's go in a little bit about the party. Like, what are the main, I guess, ideas that it stands by? What are some of the main values that, like, kind of define the political party?
Okay, so as we said, the party was established in 2016, and it was because there was a crisis coming. We knew at the time. And the main project, the ultimate project, is building a civil state in Lebanon. And to get there, we've been working and following the indicators, the social economic indicators, to be able to, at each instance in the Lebanese recent history, to be able to propose a project, a way of doing it. Because, a civil state seems like a dream that won't happen. But then when you think about how it can be accomplished, it seems that it can be done. This is what gives us hope. So in 2016, we started with the municipal elections. We had a national program, and then we have written the main regulation, the bylaws of the party, and then we started opening up for new members. Then the crisis started showing a little bit more, and we started writing the correction program, if we would like to call it so, about how to first try to avoid the crisis, the meltdown before 2018. Then after 2018, we had the 4-stage program that we were discussing before going on air, and the transitional government. And this transitional government will lead us to this civil state. So it's not about how they frame it today. Is it in the text, or is it in how we behave, and nufus, whatever. It's about what policies you put on the table, and how implementing these policies will lead you to believe that you are a citizen in a state.
But so you say civil state, what does that actually mean in practice? Like we mentioned a few things, workers' rights, better urban planning, an equal, like not really monopolized resources or industries. But when you say citizen, like a civil state, what does that entail?
A civil state means like every individual in this country has a direct connection to the state, not through the sect he or she belongs to. That's the simplest way to put it. And it's in the Constitution. So we're not asking for very out of earth suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. And wait, sorry, just a quick thing. How does that like relate? What's the difference when we say civil? Because we had an interview with, we've been interviewing a few parties, and one of them had mentioned how, something that concerns her is when parties say like civil and refuse to use the word secular. And so I'm just wondering, like, because they're kind of similar. So like, is there a specific deliberate attempt to not use secular in the rhetoric? Like, how does that relate to secularism? Because you said, a citizen relates to their country outside of their sect.
Yeah. So that would be the tension in Arabic between Almaniye and Madaniye. And the choice of the word is purely etymological, because Madaniye relates to the Medina, where the people used to live and pay the tax to the Amir or Sultan or whatever, the citizens, those who lived in the city. This is where it comes from. But Almani, or what translates today to secular, it's rather a term that comes from the religious sphere, whereby they called secular the priests who lived in the siècle. It comes from the French siècle. So they weren't, because, at the time priests lived in, they were secluded from society. So it's purely etymological. It doesn't mean anything in politics. It's just a way to find our differences without trying.
أنت سألت, or basically to sum up, like, are there specific, you were talking about the civil state, but is that like the only, let's say, objective that مواطنون ومواطنات has? I mean, they definitely have a lot, or you definitely have a lot, but there is that one that kind of بيجمعون or brings them all together. Is that it for you?
Yes, but we can actually try to talk about what means a civil state other than this direct relation, because when you diagnose the system in Lebanon and how it managed to last this long, despite all its shortcomings, you see how every Zaim had crippled his bia, his shara, his people, through the basic rights by transforming these rights into services that can only be acquired through him. Healthcare, education, employment. I mean, everything you need, you have to go to Zaim, to the Zaim. Otherwise, you don't have anything. So breaking these channels through a universal healthcare, education, free basic education for all, you start to build the basis of a secular state. You establish the dignity for the society, you disconnect them from the gripples of the Zaim, and this is how you start building towards the civil state.
You create a relationship between the citizen and government to give them their rights, which I totally agree with. I mean, everything else that comes from that is basically a symptom of the problem, which is people not getting their basic rights. So having to resort to Zaim or some other clientelist network, أو يكونوا مواطنين فاسدين and stuff like that. But how do you get, who's going to come and implement that? Who's going to come and actually create that state that takes care of its people?
Well, the society is filled with people who aspire for a civil state, but the problem is when you misdiagnose why we don't have it, meaning blaming people for facade, corruption, and not really understanding how the system works and really controls us since we are born, this is how you fail to reach a common platform where you can work towards the civil state. What we are trying to do is reaching there through political organization. Otherwise, it's going to be small groups at the local level that won't really threaten the very presence of these zaims. Because what threatens these zaims is really starting to see people getting away from their networks and really believing that something else is possible. And in order to really find the strength to build it, we need political organization, political parties, really, working real politics. This is what we're trying to do.
What would you say real political organization and work is versus not the real political organization or work?
Yes, real political organization, not only political parties, but also regaining the role of syndicates, of orders, the professions, the laborers, not local groups that actually find members who are, they use the term يشبهونا. There's no يشبهونا. You have to have a project, a program. You agree on the project, and then you build people around it. Because we're not all cute, we're not all funny, we're not all lovable. We might have silly people among us, but if we agree on the program, we can work on it.
Hey, so looking into this political program and the fact that you mentioned syndicates and like different forms of political organization, what does that look like in the broader scheme of Lebanon's political state right now? Like with there's different coalitions forming, there's different allies, like allyships forming. What are your views on that and more like your role within that larger scheme of things? Because we know that Muwatinun hasn't joined a coalition as of yet, right? I think as of now. You're in talks with different parties and things like that, but in terms of like we've mentioned a few people from we've interviewed a few people from the April 13 coalition, just to give a few examples. So like what are your views on forming different coalitions or joining different groups? Where do you draw the line? That kind of
Are we
thing.
talking about the coming elections or in general?
Talking syndicates and coming elections, yeah.
Because we had in the previous experiences in trying to build coalitions, even in the national elections of 2018. But none of these coalitions, even the ones currently being built, lasted. But then you start asking why and diagnosing the problem. For us, again, it's about the program. We can negotiate and discuss a program as much as we can, as much as we need with any party in Lebanon. But as long as we agree on it, then you have a coalition. You group people around a program, not because they like each other, again. But we did take part in many coalitions, like in the Order of Engineers, in the past 2 elections. But today, for the national elections, the problem is that the coalitions being built today are following the same logic of the Sulta. How? They are being built at the local level, where you have like some groups working together in one district, but they might end up working against each other in a different district. That is because there is no one national program that they agree on, that they can run everywhere, represented everywhere in the country, based on these policies, choices that they have to make. So how can we build coalitions in a specific area and not in a different one? How do you unite a country fragmented this much when you work this way? How we see the coming elections is another chance actually, because it's part of many other battles we're trying to fight, to actually say that we do not want to go back to where we were. We do not want housing loans. We do not want banks that are overfed with dollars that don't serve the economy the way they were. We do not want to play within the same roles of the system, just with new faces, with better faces. We want a new era where we can build towards this civil state by prioritizing the difficult choices, not hiding them in order to agree on a minimum denominator, as they say. we need to decide today on what are the priorities, agree on them, and then take them everywhere to all the Lebanese people and be able to present them in the north, in the south, the same way, without changing the discourse in order to please people in specific regions or not.
Yeah. So you mentioned political programs and kind of objectives that you should set in order to agree on to form alliances or coalitions or whatever else. But so what exactly does that mean? Yani, Akid, we're not talking about slogans. Like, those are things that we all agree on. But so are you talking about, I don't know, is there, like, where does that program where does that program range from for you to kind of agree with someone on it and create an alliance with them? Is it like economic policies, random slogans?
No, definitely not random. Well, today, after several years since the crisis started, time has become more and more expensive. We're losing more people to migration, to despair even. So the priorities, you have the economic, of course, how you manage the financial collapse without taking the burden on society. So how do you plan an economy where you can have the contribution of productive sectors? How do you plan a fiscal system that rewards the productive sectors to be able to rebuild and rebalance your debt and your economy? There's also the question of migration, internal, external, refugees. How do you deal with them? You can't just hide from the facts. They are the reality. You can't just hide them. So how do you deal with the changes of the society? How do you plan a governance system that unifies the country? So today we talk about the central state. We do not talk about decentralization. Decentralization today is just an imported concept that's being used out of under a good governance slogan, while if it's applied today with the current municipalities we have, it's going to be just another tool to fragment the country. So before talking about decentralization, we need a strong central state that does a census and knows who lives where, because municipalities today are representatives of those who migrated, those who live in the city, and of course the property owners of the village. They do not represent the people who live there. So you do not do decentralization with such municipalities. But also you need to have units that have equal resources. Otherwise, you're gonna increase inequality, because some units through this decentralized system will have more resources than others. So you'll have better places. You're gonna increase the dichotomy in the society, while you need exactly the opposite of it. So a central state is a priority in the program. It's sort of a red line that we cannot really negotiate. Also, I talked a little bit about the economic meltdown. So the banks, facing the banks, challenging them, making the owners of the banks, making them pay for the cost we have endured in the past 30 years. We're going to have healthcare at the expense of their own profit that they did in the past 30 years. And this is another point that we cannot really negotiate. And then the external relationships, the foreign relationships, how we manage our role in the region, not pro-against like a football game, but rather have policies for that, play a role in that, because everything is changing. And if we do not really step up, we're going to just end up a collateral damage for another plan.
So you named like 3 or 4 things, or let's say kaza shaghli, that are considered red lines that ma بتساوموا, let's say عليهم. Which one do you think are other parties or alternative parties more agreeing with, and other points that parties are not really agreeing with? And are there specific parties that you feel, alternative parties again, that you feel closer to than others?
To be honest, I haven't really seen full-fledged programs to be able to assess how aligned they are. The negotiations we're having in the past month, even years, have been going on and off with many groups, but didn't really reach a happy ending, let's say. For example, many of the groups are talking about decentralization today, and they're following the same logic in how they are running for the elections, and this is really dangerous. What else? Regarding the economic decisions, you have, at the beginning, they weren't clear, but now you can see a full spectrum about how they are going about it, from the Ana Khat Ahmar to the Communist Party. But the problem is, again, the choices are not clear in the way they are presenting them. I mean, if we say that we need a healthy banking sector, how do you do that? How do you deal with the current banks, the zombie banks that are not functioning? So you need clearer choices to be able to negotiate on what you agree or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say. It's easy to say that we all want, social justice, like all that kind of stuff. But you're right. How are we going to get there? You and I could differ in huge ways on how we think we would achieve that. So basically, you're saying that unless you kind of agree on the ways to achieve those things and the next steps and the policies, then that's it. Like, that's what creates alliances.
Exactly. And clarifying these choices and being able to assume that these are our choices loudly everywhere in Lebanon, not change the way you present them depending on where you are running in the elections. And this is the main issue.
Yeah, I mean, I see that too, because if somebody is running on a different program or platform, depending on where they are, it kind of shows a bit of a lack of rigidness, I guess. Where do you actually stand on certain issues, and how much are you compromising those values depending on whether you're running wherever, in one district or another in Lebanon. There are any groups that you do similar, like you do see some similarities where it could potentially be?
Well, we've had talks with all the groups, more or less. But yeah, again, it's clarity that we need on even on what we disagree on, not only on what you agree on. So there are ongoing talks, and we'll see in the coming weeks if it's going to lead. We hope so.
Because I thought, like, I see Lihaki and Muatinun kind of similar on certain issues. So that's why...
yeah, we've had
and you're both also not... Like, you both haven't joined the coalition, so that's why, like, that was... that came to mind.
We've had a lot of common battles, to say, in the past years, but today the main issue is the way Lihaqi is approaching the elections as they're following a decentralized way in forming their coalitions, which goes against what I was talking a little while before, how we need one national program that unifies the country around it, not the other way around.
Okay. So in terms of the elections, how do you actually see the elections? As a stepping stone, as kind of a necessary thing to participate in? What are your views on the actual parliamentary elections?
So the coming elections are just another fight we're gonna go through in order to establish this narrative I was talking about, making people really believe and listen there could be something else, and an arena where we can really directly fight the sectarian parties, the Zaims, and the bankers. So the bank owners, to be specific. So it's not... We truly believe that these elections are not going to change the system in Lebanon. We do not change our views on that. It's just another battle, and the better we do at it, it's another fight that through which we can really strengthen the balance of power that eventually would lead to this transitional government we're still calling for. So it is not the final battle in the war. It's just another one, and we're going to go through it no matter what.
So you mentioned transitional government, and on your site there's different phases that you guys talk about. Sorry, I just wrote them, so I'll just... Phase 1, capturing reality. Phase 2, controlling the effects of bankruptcy. Phase 3, formation of a cohesive society and of an economy with defenses and balanced relations with respect to the outside. And Phase 4, parliamentary elections. So it feels like we're kind of, even though you were calling for transitional government after the Thawra, like we're now 2 months or 3 months away from the election. So how has that shifted or reshifted focus? Because you just mentioned it's still something that you think like needs to happen, but having people in the government until then would obviously be helpful, like from having people on the inside, let's say. But how have you shifted focus? If you've shifted focus, where does that stand right now?
We didn't really shift focus because in our program, the elections come last. After you have really re-established the dignity of the society, you strengthened your role, your economy, you rebuilt the basics of what the state should have. And the elections in our program comes following a different law, after having done a census. Today, we are running to these elections following the Sulta rules. It's their law, it's their playground. So that's why...
They're counting.
They count, exactly. Yeah. We know how they count. And let's not forget how the situation in the country is becoming even worse and worse. So no, these elections are not going to change the system. They're not the same to what we called in the program. They're just another battle that was imposed on us, so to speak. So we have to take it. We have to show that there are people in this country that believe they are capable of joining this program and giving it strength. That's how we chose the title of the platform or the list. And then maybe these elections would help towards this plan of transitional government.
So these elections would be, let's say, used as, or hopefully used as, kind of flipping or strengthening that power balance in our favor. So we could use that to reach to a transitional government and all the other islahat that would come after.
Exactly. And that's why the period before the elections even matters more, because people are listening. Mm-hmm. There could be some talk about real politics, about our lives, about how we deserve universal healthcare. We deserve education. Today, schools are closing. This is not acceptable. Doctors are migrating. And when people are ready to listen or are willing to listen, we need to provide for this hope, this dream that, there is
you need to feed it.
Yeah,
you need to feed it. Do you still have anything on like elections?
One more. So in terms of elections, have you identified specific candidates that will be running? In the elections, do you have certain areas where you're stronger than others?
So we started. We elaborated the program at the beginning because we're following the same logic. We need to have a program. And it's not an electoral program. It's a political program, the same one. We develop it, we update it following the crisis, how things are changing. We add more numbers. So we have a full-fledged program that we will also keep on working on. And around this program, we're trying to invite people to read it, to discuss it, accept it or not. And the more we have people supporting it, the more chances it will have. But if we don't find these people, we in Muwatinun are ready to really hold it on our own. So we're not closed, we're not rigid, we are clear. We are ready to take this program to the elections on our own, but we're also very open to have anyone take it, even if we have to give up our places for it. Because it's not about changing faces. It's about making this program reach the people, to discuss it, to even show the Zama that there's something else happening and they should start fearing.
Hala, you touched your question shway upon like different areas of outreach in terms of elections. But generally, how does Muwatinun and Muwatinat go about that? Do you guys have outreach in different areas? Are there areas where you have let's say, maybe more members or a bigger audience in Lebanon and outside of Lebanon?
You know, this twisted law allows you to run anywhere you want if there's a seat for the sect you belong to. So it's not really where we are from as members, but rather where we can really hurt the Sulta most. And we think we will be able to be present everywhere in Lebanon. And this is the plan. We need this project to reach all the country as one, not as different regions. So this is what we're doing. Last week, we launched the first batch of candidates, around 55 candidates. These can reach 120, these can stay 55. It depends on the following weeks, how things go, but we are ready.
Are those public? Can we see them anywhere? Or?
Yes, of course. We launched the page for the list that is called قادرين نخلي الأزمة فرصة. We are capable of transforming this crisis into an opportunity. The candidates are listed on the page. On the pages of مواطنون as well, we shared the information, but also the live streaming of the event last Sunday, in which we launched the candidates, but more importantly, the program. We had several speeches presenting the main points of it. The program is available online on the page of Adrien, qadrin2022.com. But yeah, it's all online.
Okay, so if we're talking, but do you have any election stuff specifics? Okay, cool. If we're talking a bit about the group, I know in conversations, the main concern with people who, let's say, don't support Muwatinun or are a bit, hesitant with the group is the stance on Hezbollah. So can you talk a little bit about that? I looked over. There is, you do have a stance on it, but it's a bit vaguely worded in a sense that, I can read, the issue of Hezbollah's weapons. We believe that the high combat effectiveness accumulated, this is in English, sorry, I don't know if the translation was accumulated by Lebanese men and women in the resistance against the Israeli enemy, the most prominent of whom is Hezbollah, and not the weapons that are mere commodities that can be bought and sold, constitutes a great asset for Lebanon. It is not permissible to forfeit or bargain on it. The debate around it must be centered on its transition from the first day while maintaining its effectiveness from the resistance of a sect to a national, military, and of course, social and economic system whose burdens are distributed upon all just as its benefits reach anyone. Can you explain a bit more about that? Is that, so to merge, the Hezbollah with the army, what does that mean practically? Or
let's try to add a little bit of context, because we know that everyone thinks our position is vague, but we think that it seems vague because the other want to hear it's with or against. It's more complex than that. Today in Lebanon, if this country chooses enmity with the Zionist project, it has to assume that this is a decision, and it's not an easy decision. We choose this. We choose enmity with the Zionist project. And in order to defend ourselves and to be able to be strong to defend ourselves, we have to build a strong state. Goes without saying. Today, the burden of fighting this project has been on the shoulders of Hezbollah, which, we won't tell the history today again. It started in 1982, and it's been going on. And so the burden has been falling on the shoulders of one specific sect that has become today part of the system that is killing its own society, the whole society, the Lebanese society. So today the issue is how you move these resources that have done so much in fighting this project, the Zionist project, into the resources of a state, of a civil state, that will become even stronger in fighting this project. Because the burden won't be falling on one sect, it would be falling on the whole society, and the whole society would be accepting this challenge. It shouldn't be only burdened on one part of it, and the rest of the society doesn't seem to care even, doesn't want it. So, and this is how you make it stronger, because today, all the achievements are in the danger of falling apart because of the sectarian system, which is itself falling apart. So as long as Hezbollah is part of the system, it's risking taking away all the achievement it has done. And this is why we say that it's not the question of arms, the physical arms, It's about how you manage this strength, these human resources, into a project that means for everyone, not only the Shia. I don't know if this made it clearer, but this is how we think about it.
So as in putting putting the Zionist issue or the as more of a nationalistic problem, addressing it more nationally instead of it laying on a specific sect.
Exactly.
Which I totally understand. Yeah.
But at the same time, then, when dealing with that, when that problem or whatever it is doesn't fall onto one sect, when the government is handling it, or that's at least my personal opinion, when the government is handling it, that's when the situation is being handled in favor of the country's benefit. Because when one sect is making that decision, then it could not be for the general country's benefit. If one sect is controlling whatever it is, foreign policy or I don't know what. So if there isn't this strong state or government entity that is making these decisions, then anybody can take that decision and twist it in their own kind of way.
Yes, and that's how it connects also to each party's foreign allegiance. So you have people who call it احتلال Iran, and then you have people who call it
right.
I don't know how they say it, but they perceive it as the protector of this muqawamah. So it's not with or against. When you move these resources to the national level within a strong civil state, this is when you can make it even stronger. Exactly, that you put it better than me.
But I think it also is with or against. I mean, we're all against one group of people who has arms and others who don't, or one group of people who has more power than others. But it's about, is that the actual problem, or is that a symptom of a lack of government or a lack of a state that's been there for 50 and 60 years, and like Kuwait were strong one day, Hezbollah is strong today. But then what is it exactly? Is it, again, I think people are just mad that not everyone says F Hezbollah and is very explicit about it. But is that the key? To not use that narrative? Are you trying to pull people towards you more, or make it seem a bit more, I don't know, nice? I know I'm not coming and saying, hey, F you, give me your gun. I'm telling you, this will be better, and I'm coming at you in a different kind of way.
It's not a coincidence that some people call us Umala and some people call us Jinah Madani of Hezbollah. So it's not about pleasing, because you'll have both. Because unfortunately, this is how politics are discussed in Lebanon. And that is why everyone sees this position as vague, because it doesn't say with or against or insult. So yeah, and also to follow up on what you said, all the parties have signed the Bayanat Wazari in the past 30 years saying Jay Sha'ab Muqawama. It's hiding behind your finger or what? You have to take choices. If you choose enmity, you work on it. If you don't, then let's discuss it clearly. Not really delegate the negotiations of Tarsim al-Hudud, but then again say Makhasna. Yeah. So this is not a state negotiating its borders, its resources, its defense. Yeah.
ما زال عم نحكي عن these narratives that are surrounding the party. There's, or what we've perceived, let's say, is that there's the vague, in quotations, Hezbollah stance, and there's the concept that, or at least from the outside, Muwatinun and Muwatinat are perceived to be kind of majorly led by one person, which people at this point are really weirded out by and scared about, because what we've been used to in Lebanon is this system of zaims and stuff. And I know that Shal bin Nahas actually got re-elected or something like that not too long ago, I think less than a year ago. So is there like a democratic process for that? Or what's your internal structure kind of like? That kind of stuff. How long can he be president or secretary general for?
Yeah. So the first round, he was a secretary general. It was before we did the مؤتمر, first مؤتمر تأسيس, because the party was established then. And after 3 years, meaning last year we did the elections, we elect a delegates council, and we elect the general secretary. So Sharb al-Nahas was re-elected, and the next time in 2 years, he won't be able to run again for that position and within the party. So yes, we do have a process. We do have internal elections, and we do it every 3 years. The delegates council members number is relative to the members of the party. Today we are 15 members in this council. I'm one of them. In 2 years there will be other elections, and the number of the members of this council will depend on the members of the party, and yeah.
And in terms of any other decisions, let's say, that are being made in مواطنون ومواطنات في دولة, I don't know if I want to just give any example in terms of political alliances, or in terms of, I don't know, changing a stance in terms of economic policy or whatever it is. Are these decisions central to الأمين العام, or the delegates decide, or how exactly is this?
The political alliances are mainly led, within the Aman Aame, there are different units. So there is the political relations bureau or committee that works on this. Some issues are taken to the delegates council, some are not, but the decision is central. We are not proud of this, but or we're not shy about it, but it's not related to a person. It's related to the council all itself. So there is a process. It is centralized, and it's working.
Okay, and just to go a bit back on the elections, you had asked this in the last interview, and I kind of like it. But like, what are your what are your views on, like, personally, seats? How many realistically do you think, or are you aiming to get? You mentioned 55 names or 50 names, and it could go up to 128. But obviously, you guys are in conversations about that. But yeah, like what's your ideal number or realistic number? How many people do you think could potentially get into parliament?
I'm not gonna make predictions, but just to make the scene more hopeful.
Please.
Today, the Zama are strong because of the law, and because each of them is strong in his area or region. Like, for example, Skef and Zahle can't run elsewhere because they won't mean anything. They're a local Zaim. It goes the same everywhere. So when you look at the percentages that these coalitions have, the largest of them is 15%. 15 is nothing. In the municipal elections in 2016, we got about 8% of the votes. But because of the law, because of the fragmentation, because of everything, we didn't get much seats. We got 2 or 3 in different municipalities. But 8% of the votes meant the coalition of Jumblad, Kataib, and Franjiyeh together. The 3 of them are 8%. It means we are as strong as Jumblad. We were as strong as Jumblad, Kataib, and Franjiyeh in 2016. Today, if we get 15% of the vote, it means we are stronger than the strongest of them. But because of the law, because it's their playground, we won't have the seats. That's why it's not about the seats per se. It's about how much this project can have.
How many numbers of votes, let's say, for this project?
Yeah, the percentages of the votes, number of the votes.
2016, it was only Muwatinun.
Yes, because it was...
Which was the main existing...
Exactly.
Political party in the area.
Some of them started at the time, but the difference was there was Muwatinun across Lebanon. None of the other groups ran in different areas. That's the difference.
Okay.
Just because we were already like talking a lot about like the narratives surrounding the party and stuff. So what would you say to people who have these views of the party, whether it's, oh, they're apologetic towards Hezbollah, or I don't know, they're too centralized and stuff, like, because in the end it is, I'm not part of your party, but if I say I am, then it is our job, or it is your job, to kind of communicate to those people what your plans are, or I don't know, to really let them see you the way you see yourself. So what would you say to these people, or what can be done, or what do you hope to do?
I mean, especially today in the crisis, and we as young people, if we really want to stay in the country and make an impact, there aren't too many options, so these issues of like the structure of the party or unclarity on some issues, they can be solved and discussed and talked through in a way that lets the big picture stay in front of us. There is a crisis. We as young people are threatened by migration, by unemployment, by our parents not having access to healthcare when they need. So let's rethink what is the challenge today and how can we really be part of how we solve it or change how things are. So today I can identify as a young female Lebanese, but I can also say that I have taken the shortcut to want to be a citizen, not a female, not a young, not whatever, because there are a million ways you can divide society across, sects, gender, nationalities, races, what have you. I want to be a citizen, and this party, Citizens in a State, reflects this project for me. So let's forget all the other differences that might matter at some point, but today there are priorities, and I saw that these priorities are present in this project, so I'm supporting it, and I do not feel unrepresented in any sense.
We're going to be closing, but what are a few things that you're working on now? You guys were working on a gold reserves, trying to raise awareness on gold reserves. What else are you working on? And can you just mention a bit about that for people who might not know?
Yeah, actually we did a campaign on the gold reserve 2 years ago or 3 years ago already, the first one. It was before all the crisis, before October 2019. And then we did another one, last year, because then they were starting the negotiation on how to distribute the losses, and there was a real doubt that the gold might be hijacked in order to cover the losses.
Are they still counting the gold?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't have updates yet. And after the gold campaign, the second one, we are part of the Hamlet Win Sanduak. Where's your fund, if this is the best translation. And it's with the syndicates to, engage the members of the syndicates to have a better position in the distribution of the losses, because, the syndicates have their accounts and the funds in the accounts, and they are treated as individual account holders while they represent thousands of families, and this is the healthcare and the pensions for the members of these syndicates that they are obliged to pay in order to practice their professions. So it's not fair that they also lose these funds just because banks won't declare bankruptcy. So this is the Hamle. There are events on the ground, and the main message of this campaign is to negotiate with the bank owners to ensure healthcare coverage, not only for the syndicate members, but eventually for the whole society, engaging these people, because they represent a large part of society and they lost also a lot. Also, the elections are coming, but internally we're working a lot of production of numbers, following the indicators. We recently try to accomplish not a census, but we did an estimate of the population in Lebanon and the possible scenarios if migration will remain strong, and it might remain strong, what the form of society would be in 20 years. And the numbers are really frightening because everything we know is going to be different. and we're following the indicators of the economy and the other committees. And yeah, there's a lot of work.
Sorry. You mentioned everything we know would be different. So in terms of migration, can you just explain, like, what were some of the major indicators that you found in that? And you mentioned also 80% of, like 20% of a young population.
Will only be Lebanese and 80% of the elderly. To make it more relatable, I mean, whom of us has friends remaining here in Lebanon? I mean, most of friends have left years ago, and if not years ago, it's in the past years. So yeah, there's a drain, especially in the young population. There's a migration crisis that no one has solved. They just they deny it. They thought that when the war started in Syria, they thought that it's going to be 2 weeks and they're going to all return. It's been 11 years. So the Lebanese society is changing. The Syrian society is changing. 90% of the Syrian population in Lebanon is under the poverty accepted levels. 60% of the Lebanese society with migration. And who's going to migrate? It's the educated. It's the young. It's the main energy you need to build a state. So yeah, think about it in 20 years and how this population change. If we do nothing, if we do not face the reality, if we do not think of labor, of economic resources, of human resources, and how you manage them, not with or against, not use people to as cards to negotiate, to think about complementarity with both Syrian and Lebanese economy. So this won't be a burden, but actually a resource you can use to rebuild industries, to rebuild economy, to rebuild a society actually that knows each other, that relates to each other, that with no crime, with no poverty, with equality. And it hasn't been done in the past 30 years, and if it's not done now, it's not going to be another 30 or 40 years, though. There's another hope we can do anything, because 3 of us most probably we're going to be out of the country.
You like took us down a little bit. Like I feel depressed now. But you're saying it yourself, like, does anyone still have more than a handful of friends who are still in Lebanon? And we were talking about this earlier when you got here in the parking lot, that you've been part of Muwatinun and Muwatinat and active in politics for like 5 or 6 years now, and you just find yourself being more active. What is that like? What is that source of motivation? Like, where is that coming from? What are you seeing that others are not, or what can you teach others to kind of be more hopeful or actually be motivated to do something?
It's not merely about hope, but really what choices do we have if we want to stay here? If we do nothing, things will change and we won't be able to affect them. But even if we leave, even our friends who left, it doesn't mean that they are not part of this society and they can still play a role, even if they're outside Lebanon. We do have members outside Lebanon, a lot of them. It is sad, but it's also helpful in some instances. So if you just sit at home and nag, what can we do? You can fight with the bank, but you can't get what you want as an individual. You need a group, you need a political organization to be part of, so you can make this change happen. And motivation comes from work, actually. The more work, the more motivation. And the more change you see around, the more you build, you believe that this one will get you closer to what you're trying to do, because we can't sit still and not do anything. Otherwise, they're just going to rule us the way they did the past 30 years, and we're going to be maf'ul bihi.
So what are those? Sorry, I'm like trying to maybe like get inspired myself, or like have some listeners actually also feel something. But what are those little things? Like, you know, in Lebanon, one of the ugly things is that there's not a lot of chances for these wins that will give you motivation, because a lot of times, like in every way, like we get oppressed if we try to protest, or if we, I don't know, try and syndicate elections or whatever it is. So what are those little things? Like, are you talking about, I don't know, having a conversation with someone and finding that they changed their mind, or I don't know, seeing مواطنون ومواطنات growing in numbers, or I don't know, I'm trying to make it more like tangible. Yeah.
It's all of it, but mostly the kama actually. When the sulta oppresses you, it means they're fearing you, they are seeing you, and this is what gives us more motivation. It's the opposite way. Because we are challenging them, really. We want to become dangerous for them. Otherwise, nothing will change. And in order to become dangerous, we need every hand here, every brain, every person to be able to be part of it so they can see we are not a few, we are a lot. And this is how they're going to start fearing that we are losing our شارع, our بيئة to a different program. And yeah, so you start to feel like you're part of something bigger, part of a common, of something that we never experienced before, because we were only individuals, we were families, we were friends, we were never a group, a political group that's aspiring for change. And really seeing that you are seen, you are making them feel threatened, and this is what gives you more motivation.
كمان what you were saying, Petra, like rang a bell in my head, because I remember like the beginning days of like the uprising and protests and stuff, that one of the things that would give me motivation and keep me going would be to just like sit and imagine like those leaders like all like am يرشفوا in their chairs, like scared of us coming for them. So yeah, I can relate to that.
They were destabilized. They still are, because I think they didn't expect it to end so soon. I mean, they were really like drunk. So yeah,
they weren't making any decisions. Like ما كانوا عم يسترجوا ياخدوا ولا قرار.
They just delegated some
hot potato.
Yeah. And we're losing time, so yeah.
Okay, anything? Do you have anything you want to...
Thanks for the opportunity, and
Thank you for being here. Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. Thanks for your time.
Maybe we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Updates.